What I just done read.
It is really of your own will and leave some of the happiness you bring.
I'm glad he said that and not me. Otherwise, knowing my luck, I'd be up to my arse cheeks in nightmare creatures before you could say the witching hour. Hello, my name is Max, this is my Bohemian Book Corner, and we are here to discuss what I've just unread, what I think of it, a bit of information about the author, and whether or not I think you should check it out yourselves. Before we come on to that, very quickly, thank you to everybody who's been checking out the channel recently. You are more than welcome, and please, if you do enjoy what we do here, do throw us a like, leave us a comment, share the videos out there, and of course, most importantly, throw us a sub as well, because we will love you. No, I've done that one before. Because it would be quite nice. Let's go with that, shall we? Okay, so if you were with us last time, then you'll know that we've put paid to Kurt Vonnegut and also replaced him on the blackboard with Dan Eldon. As I mentioned last time, Dan Eldon was a British photojournalist who unfortunately was killed in Somalia in the early 90s and posthumously had 4 of his journals published. And interested in reading one of them, I suppose I should just start from the beginning, but just to give you guys a chance to get involved, if you've ever read any of his journals, if there's anyone in particular that you think I might enjoy, stick it in the comments below. And once I've got a few, I'll pick one, or pick whichever one gets the most recommendations, and I will give that a read. We do also have, of course, the business of our word of the day. This one is it's a bit of a random find, but I just liked it because of its simplicity. And this one is ah. Not ah or aha or any other variation thereof. Quite simply, RR, spelt like this. And this is a jagged formation of basaltic lava that has a soapy, soapy? Was it soapy? A light and... It wasn't soapy. It's close. Soapy is close enough. I'm just going to keep saying soapy now until you all feel a little bit disturbed. A light and frothy texture. I couldn't find out too much about the etymology of the word beyond the fact that it was first coined in the mid-19th century. On is probably the appropriate word. On the island of Hawaii, which I suppose isn't too much of a surprise, as they have a bit more of a daily relationship with
liquid hot magma.
Thank you, Dr. Evil. So yes, I'm not sure how you're going to use that one in conversation generally, but I'm sure if you need to, you'll find somewhere to slip it in. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. We're going to have some tea. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's have a look at today's book, shall we? That is going to be, well, it's not going to be, it is, A Morbid Initiation, Book 1 of 3 by Philippe Boulle. Now, for those of you who are in the know, this is Philippe Boulle, not to be confused with, and I hope I'm saying this right, Philippe Boulle, who apparently was, I think he's retired now, was quite a prominent politician and lawyer in the Seychelles. That is not that Philippe Boulle, this is a different Philippe Boulle. I've not been able to find out much about him. I have tried to reach out to him both through his LinkedIn account and also on his Twitter account as well. As of yet, up until the point when we've recorded this, I've had no response. So hopefully he will maybe even see this video and get in contact with us for when I get around to doing the second book and offer up some anecdotes that he'd be happy for me to share with you lovely people at home. What I have been able to find out, though, is that Philippe Boulle was born in September 1971 in Montreal, Canada. He attended McGill University, where he graduated with a BA in political science and history, and has gone on to become quite a prominent games developer. Between 1996 and 2006, he worked for White Wolf Publishing in a number of capacities, including as a contributor, a games developer, obviously, a designer and writer for both Vampire the Masquerade and also for Werewolf the Apocalypse, and was also their marketing director for a while as well. Whilst working there, as I say, he did a lot of the games development stuff. He was also author of 2 trilogies of stories. One of this one that we're going to be looking at today for the Victorian Age vampire setting, as well as a trilogy about the Sombre clan. He's also written some of the Tribe books, as well as a few novels for Werewolf, specifically for the Fianna tribe and also for the Red Talons. Since then, it appears that he went on to be a narrative supervisor as well as campaign supervisor for Warhammer 40k, and I believe currently works as a games developer and as one of the lead games developers for Relic Entertainment, working on Age of Empires 4. That's pretty much all I could find out, but I think that kind of covers what we need to know about he himself, and we can go straight to the book. My God, I managed to get one of those down to under 7 minutes. Wow. Miracles will never cease. Wonderful. I know we've covered vampires before, and I'm sure you'll probably realise that at some point I should have probably made mention of The Blood is the Life, bubbling away in the corner there. A Morbid Initiation, part 1 of 3. What it says on the back here is a Gilded Age, a gaslit horror. Regina Blake believes her mother to be the victim of a murder and conspiracy. Foregoing caution and propriety, she tries to uncover the truth and bring the culprits to justice. With every step, however, she uncovers more and more evidence of a secret world of danger, sensuality, and sin. With the beautiful Victoria Ash as her guide, she peels back layer after layer of this benighted world until the true horror stands exposed. Will discovering the truth be worth damning her soul? So, for those of you who don't know much about it and know much about World of Darkness, I will just touch very quickly on this before we go properly into the book. So, as far as I'm aware, 1996-97 was when Vampire the Masquerade was released as a tabletop role-playing game, and as somebody who was playing games at the time and being a huge vampire fan, this was like, wow, look at this! You get to play the monsters for a change. And the game was a bit of an overnight success. Also spurred on by other popular media at the time, not least things like Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, also coming out only sort of 2-3 years after the release of Bram Stoker's Dracula, which gave a complete resurgence to the vampire in the 90s. The game itself would go on to spawn a number of... can't really call them spin-offs, they are simply other games within the same world setting. Namely the one that I mentioned there, Werewolf the Apocalypse, but would also lead to Mage the Ascension, Changeling the Dreaming, I'm going to get this right, Wraith the Oblivion, and Demon the Fallen, if I got those all right. These are not to be confused with the variations that came out for the new World of Darkness, which were all slightly different, and would also go on... Oh no, I did miss one, Mummy. Mummy, it's either the Redemption or the Resurrection. I think it's the Resurrection is the other one. But as I said, there were others that came out afterwards, like Promethean the Created, if you wanted to get your Frankenstein monster on. But that's, as I said, that's New World of Darkness, nothing to do with what we're talking about here. I could go on for ages just about the World of Darkness, having played more of it now and seeing how each of the games just kind of unfolded that box more and more and more to the overall world setting that they had in mind, which was actually a bit of a stroke of genius. So well done to all the guys at Whitehall for that, for the scope of their creativity. What can we say about the book? Hopefully avoiding spoilers as much as possible. I did enjoy this. I found the book to be very well paced. What I do like, and hats off to Philippe Boulle for this, he has a good sense of plotting. By that I mean this isn't the literary equivalent of, say, an unexpected blockbuster film that the studio then goes, we want a trilogy. Yes, Matrix, I'm looking at you. This isn't like that at all. He knows exactly what he wants to include in here and how it's going to relate to the rest of the trilogy itself, and limits himself to what he needs to put in this book, which is brilliant because he then gives himself the freedom to explore those ideas a bit more. You never feel like there's anything missing in that respect, because you kind of get the impression that he is drip feeding the reader what they need to know at this stage of the proceedings, with those questions that they may raise to be answered in volumes 2 and volume 3, I'm presuming. So beyond what it says on the blurb on the back there, the story itself kind of starts with a prologue, which is around 1885, and then leaps ahead to the tail end of 1887, and then the majority of the text follows through into the beginning, through until about August 1888. Which anyone who has any kind of knowledge or understanding of Victorian history will know that 1888 is kind of an important year, especially if you were living in Whitechapel. It straddles a very nice line between narrative and in-game lore, and I was a bit concerned, or wasn't so not concerned, I was curious to see whether or not we may just get these massive info dumps of lore from the game that would only actually mean something to somebody who's played Vampire the Masquerade. No, there isn't that at all. He does take into account that somebody who is simply a fan of vampires might go, oh, this is interesting, I'll give it a read. And he presents information in a nice way that there's enough there that if you do know the game, you can go, oh, I know what that is. And if you don't lose anything by it, because he does take the time to explain some of the fundamentals of the game system or of the law governing how vampires work in Vampire the Masquerade within the narrative. And that's really nice. Not surprisingly, a lot of this is achieved through how our lead character comes into contact and experiences those things literally firsthand. There is there is quite a lot of wonderful attention to detail to things that were applicable to the period, and I can say this as somebody who has been a bit of a lover of Victoriana for a long time, beyond just things like reading the Sherlock Holmes novels and stories multiple times, but having read more non-fiction books about the period as well, including, I can highly recommend, I've got it somewhere, it's probably in the other room, In the Footsteps of Sherlock Holmes, which was written, and is literally about the London that Sherlock Holmes would have been inhabiting. And it's nice to see little things in there that he's included in here. I know he does say at the back, he does in the acknowledgements, thank one of his friends for correcting him and pointing out some little bits and pieces to make things feel authentic. The one I could never quite get away from is the use of the proper colloquialism for a four-wheeled carriage in Victorian London, which was generally referred to as a growler, which for some reason I can't help but thinking that the Victorians would probably smile in amusement at the way that word is used colloquially today. I'm not going to corpse again. Oh dear. There was something really nice, and again I can't say what because I don't want to spoil anything, but towards the end of the book and towards, I suppose it would be the denouement of the second act if it was a film, if you like, and I'll just say, Philippe, well played, did not see that coming, spot on. There are, not surprisingly, and again, I have no problem with this, and I'm sure other people may do, but I don't mind it. There are some nice nods, and it seems to be a thing with vampire stories post-Stoker, especially with certainly mid to late 20th century adaptations or interpretations of the vampire. There seems to be this kind of unwritten law that you have to put a little nod to Mr. Stoker's masterpiece in there. So, for example, in this, you have a character, one of the main characters' surname is Seward. There's also reference to another character who doesn't really appear in the book, but whose name is Dr. Whitby. Little things like that, which are quite nice. One of the things that I really did like, and again, this isn't a spoiler, but I will. It was kind of quite enlightening for me as something of a veteran player of the game, as to how this description of as the game calls it, vitae, vampire's blood, in which he says, thick black arterial blood like weak old pudding made from afterbirth, welled from the wound and flowed in a rich stream down her arm to pool in her cupped palm. Delicious. That I really liked, because again, it really hammers it home that yes, vampires do have blood, but it's not like yours or mine. Well, certainly not like mine. I don't know about yours. There were a couple of cons with the book, as with all of these things. You know, there's always a few things that you kind of notice that you kind of go, nothing too major. I found, and this is a weird one because it is a con, but it also isn't, because it actually worked in what he was trying to do. The con itself is that I found the early chapters. It wasn't that he was working too hard to try and evoke the kind of period setting. It was more that the period setting that he ended up evoking wasn't late Victorian. It felt to me more late 18th, early 19th century. It felt more analogous to, say, the works of Jane Austen, which is, again, as I say, which is like 70, 80 years before the book is actually set. And so initially that kind of jarred a little bit. But then when I got later into the book, I kind of went, oh, you git. That's actually really good, because even though it's evoking the wrong period, it does evoke the sense of innocence that our lead character has, or has had in her life up until that point in the narrative. So, yeah, wrong period, but it still works and it still achieves the desired effect. So again, well done. There's also, again, a couple of little things. These are minor. Well, this one's a bit of a minor niggle. Overuse of the word proper. So you were referred to, oh yes, they lived at Durham proper, or they were down by the Thames proper. Again, it's a minor thing, but it's there enough that you notice it, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have included it in here. But then again, that could be just a minor idiosyncrasy of the author himself. My biggest gripe, I think, with the book is in some of the more violent parts of the book. It's not that it's too violent, in fact, quite the opposite. I felt that in places, some of the violence is glossed over. It happens, and then the book moves on very quickly from it, which unfortunately gives the whole thing a bit of a YA novel feel to it, which again is possibly what it was intended to be, because I'm sure a lot of the people that would most likely buy this book when it came out in 2002 would have been people like myself, so college age here in the UK, so 16, 17, within that kind of category of reader. But it's still a vampire story. And it's still a vampire story set in the world of darkness, which is very dirty, very drab, very... I did have a note for it. I can't remember. Nope, I didn't write it down. Never mind. But yeah, he could have afforded to dwell and be a little bit more visceral with these things. And again, then it's not just the violent activities themselves, it's also the character's reaction to it. One in particular towards the beginning of the book. Considering, again, we are talking late Victorian era, so the 1880s, which is kind of like the golden period of Victorian England. You are still looking at a time that was still, yes, opening itself up more to technological advancement, but you're still talking about an era that was quite pious, and a lot of people would have been still quite pious at the time. So the reaction, I felt, to things that were clearly blasphemous, people's reactions to that, I think, could have been heightened. And you just needed to dwell on them for a little bit longer to really bring the horror home, which was a bit of a shame. But then again, as I say, I'm reading this as a man in his late 40s, and again, it's probably more designed for teenagers. There were a couple of other minor things, but these aren't about the narratives themselves. This is actually about the product itself. There are quite a few typos in here. Again, nothing that will lead to any kind of confusion in the text, but it's just noticeable. But the main one really about the product itself is that it does suffer from the curse of White Wolf, and that is terrible bookbinding. anybody who's played the game will know, they've probably got more than one books that are either being held together by sellotape or have just fallen apart, and you've had to put into a lever arch folder or something just to be able to keep them in order. And this is the case here as well. I don't really want to show you because I don't want to damage it anymore, but yeah, part of the binding at the back here is coming away. But that said, conversely, one of the pros about this as a product itself are some of the aesthetics of the book are lovely. Again, as best as I can without breaking anything, all of this lovely decoration and bordering and things like that, and the fonts that they use for the chapter titles, and also where there's letters as well. They've made an attempt to, again, I suppose it is a bit of a nod again to Stoker, but they've tried to put some of the letters into a different type of font or italics or whatever, which is really nice, which again does add to the immersion of the book. That's what all I've really got to say about it. As I say, I have read this one. I will go on and read the others as well. I am going to take a bit of a break before I do. But before we come to that, eyes, I'm going to leave that there for a second. I'm going to take this one so I can put it in. So while I do this, I highly recommend that you nip back to the bar and order yourself another blood doll, and I'll be right back. And here we are. We are back. Thank you for waiting. And you've got yeah, just there. There you go. Put that in a test tube and save it for later. Tea. So before we come to the I rating itself, very quickly, would I recommend this book? Yeah, I would. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's sets up a nice. It sets up an interesting story. Again, very much within this period. If you're just a lover of vampires and you're looking for something different to read, then check it out. I'm not sure how easy they are to find. I don't know whether these are still in print or not. As I said, once I've had a chance to read the rest of them, we'll come back to those then. But just based on this itself, I really enjoyed it. I think if you're a vampire fan, you'll really like it. If you are a player of the game, then I'd say that it's almost... I don't know if I'd say if it's a must-read, but certainly if you're a GM for the game, you would do yourself a lot of favours by reading it to give you a bit more of an idea of the main players of the period, because it does quite heavily go into a kind of like a who's who of vampire society in London in the 1880s. So for that reason alone, it's a good background for your own games. But yeah, I'd definitely say give it a read. With regards to the ratings itself, this one gets a full 3-star rating. It's good in both cases, so both in terms of the quality of the narrative itself and also in terms of the product itself. There are some lovely things in there that would probably have pushed this into a 4 and a 4, but the cons were noticeable enough that I had to take a point away. Hence why I've got 3 and 3, nice and simple. But it also does mean to see that you get to see properly the difference there between my new third size eye, and the old, or the 4th size eye, so you can see the difference there. Okay, let's have a little jiggle as we do. Now you're feeling even more slightly disturbed. Good. I can store this away. Well, actually, I can give this back to the person who owns it. There you go.
Thank you.
And yes, thank you, obviously, Sam, for letting me borrow it. And as soon as we can, we will get on to the second one and then the third one as well. But before that, we are going to... I'm sorry. Keep forgetting, I haven't finished with this yet, have I? We need to go to the list. So, here we go. A Morbid initiation, which is right there. That can get wiped away into the blackness of oblivion, otherwise known as the sleep of the undead. But yes, as I said, we are going to go next back to one... Oh, sorry, I should have kept this out, really. Back to the top of the list here from my original list, another one that we can get off here because it's been on there for a while. And this is Irvine Welsh's Filth. Alright. I have heard many, many wonderful and slightly disturbing things about this book, so I am kind of looking forward to jumping. I'm not sure if I will be reading it with a pig. That's it for this time. I'm going to curl up in a prison cell, I'm guessing from the look of this, and find out what's what with that. In the meantime, as I said at the beginning, thank you everybody for stopping by and seeing what I do, and until the next time, get thee gone. Okay, movies actually. We're gonna have some tea.
Oh, the man is corpse.